welcome in to the Energy Tech Podcast. Today we have Greg Sloyer from Snowflake joining us live at ICC 2025. Guys, welcome into the show.
Hey, Jeff, it is good to be here in the heart of Sacramento at ICC 2025, and I am genuinely excited to have Greg Sloyer on from Snowflake joining us here at the Energy Tech Podcast. Greg, thank you for being here and joining us. I really appreciate it.
Michael, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity.
No, I think this is going to be great. You know, I want to ask you something before we kind of kick some things off.
Sure.
I do want to ask you, what your role is with Snowflake.
Yep.
And, what your experience has been so far. We're coming to a close on ICC 2025. I want to hear about that from your perspective.
Sure. So my role, I am the industry principal for manufacturing in Snowflake. So when I'm speaking to folks outside of our space, I'm a business consultant at a technology firm.
Wow.
So I look at things from the business side.
Great.
So how do we take Snowflake's technologies, working with our partners, like many of which are here, their capabilities, their best practices, their IP, let's say,
Right.
Capabilities, and Snowflake's capabilities, and how do I solve problems in the manufacturing space or the operations or logistics or supply chain space,
Right.
with all those capabilities. So that's my role.
Awesome.
As part of this.
I like that. What has been your take so far being here at ICC 2025 this year versus the last time you were here?
Oh, that's a good question. So the venues have changed.
Yeah.
From you got one of the colleges locally here, and it was here last year. It presented a great time. This is a space for these kinds of discussions. When you start talking about manufacturing and OT and what to do with that data, these are the folks that you really want to have access to and have those conversations. This venue here allows us a lot more of those. You're not as tightly packed.
Right.
You don't. There's a lot more flow here.
Yeah.
A lot more space, obviously, but a lot more flow to have those conversations. So it's great just being able to see people and not be able to get to them because
No, you're right. I
people
think
in
so.
between.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely I use the word level up. It's very appropriate.
Absolutely.
So it is appropriate. I see that Ignition has leveled up in terms of the location away from Folsom. Their birth there, Folsom, and then here in Sacramento. The other thing is that they've got a release of 8.3 that has been pushed out, and I think that's great, and they've leveled up in that way. I think the third way they leveled up is at the Prove It flavor to that. So, as you know, Prove It was born out of Walker Reynolds, Zach Scriven, and that group, came together, started Prove It, and back in February they did their first conference, and then they brought that flavor here.
Yes.
Which is a great element. And I'm going to say this because I mean it. The fourth way is inviting folks like the Energy Tech Podcast to come on and engage not just the snowflakes of the world, but Snowflake and all the different distributors. We had a distributor on. We've got end users. We get the perspective of providers of products and key partners such as CirrusLink, and they're on the show. And so in doing so, there's a level up. Where do you think Snowflake fits in terms of a partnership with, Ignition and inductive automation?
Oh, so we've presented, I just want to say, at the ICC first time in partnership around 2023.
Right.
In that, so 3 of these ago.
Yep.
2 years.
Yeah.
And for me, this partnership, it was really some of the starting points for how we looked at getting the shop floor data into Snowflake. And, we really took that view of the process engineers, the manufacturing sites, the OT specialists know that data. They understand their processes. We up in the cloud want to take that knowledge and then bring that up, not say from a cloud perspective, this is how to do it.
Right.
And define their plants from that perspective. So we really took that approach, and I think working with Ignition and Arlen from CirrusLink, who you mentioned, tremendous group there, really leverage that. So we bring that data in. We're working through the IoT Bridge for Snowflake from CirrusLink there, and getting able to have access to that data and then combine it with the data we've been more used to, let's say from the IT side. So that's the ERP data and CRM and all the other types of IT acronyms that you get into.
For sure.
To be able to leverage that to do bigger classes of problems. So not just, sort of the individual shop floor kinds of things, but across multiple plant sites now that data is all together up in the cloud. And then combining it with your non-OT typical data,
Right.
and leverage then big AI, Gen AI, all those advanced analytics that everybody talks about on that type of data.
Oh man, and you said a lot right there, and we're gonna talk about some of that because Greg, I think there's so much there. One thing I know about Snowflake, and I maybe Arlen has put it this way, but because you have some other products that might be out there that are part of the hyperscalers environments. But one thing about Snowflake is that you're right. I think you started at the edge, looked at what was happening there, and said, I could say it's basically from scratch, saying, hey, we have a way in order to bridge and stream the data into Snowflake, and that's what was born when we talked about something specific like IoT Bridge or Snowpipe Streaming, right?
Right, and it's not just, we're streaming that time series data in, it's bringing that contextual data.
Yes.
And that's really where it's at. And it's not only bringing the contextual data in, and Arlen talks about this, and I'm sure he did in his podcasts and discussions, and there's videos out there. But with those components, that process, we're bringing that data up in zero code.
Yeah.
So it goes from ignition, your UDT structures and the time series data and the context and all that, and is coming up into Snowflake, and then the tables and views and all that. So it's now landing in a usable format.
Yeah, basically a SQL on steroids is the way I like to coin it.
Yep.
Again, that's an Arlen phrase, but I take it just
good
because
phrase from Arlen.
it's an easy way when I'm talking to. So you said something which I think is great. It's not just the data that gets contextualized right at the edge, and then it makes its way, and then you've got ignition, and then you've in between. Then you're working with MQTT.
Yep.
You've got Snowpipe Streaming, Sparkplug B, right in there. So that data from the time it's at the edge is contextualized, and now you're right. It's going to make sense to the IT person, on the other side of there in Snowflake. It's going to make sense to Mary in accounting. It's going to make sense to, someone else that's in measurement groups, especially when we talk about oil and gas or energy. It's going to make sense to finance. It's going to make sense to every group. And we don't have a specialist in automation that has to make sense of the data and provide context. It's there already.
Yeah. So when you see a value, let's say, it's a temperature value. Oh, and it's in Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
So those things. So I think that's part of it. And then through those connections, if they go back through the manufacturing sites and add energy sensors, that's been my phrase this time.
Yeah.
Energy sensors, new tags, and that gets into ignition, those are populating in the Snowflake automatically through that process. So the tables and views are updated or added in the Snowflake side. So now you can start immediately using that data. The data scientists can do all their cool stuff.
Yeah.
And really drive value.
And I'm going to get to that part in a minute because I do have some questions I want to ask. But right now, if I'm an energy group, and I'll give you some examples. So sometimes in the energy space, you have these large super majors, okay? The Exxons of the world, the Chevrons. They can undertake a project. They can hide $1 million, okay? But you have lots of what I call regional players, and they're in O&G, they're in landfill gas, renewable natural gas. They're in these spaces, and they have such a need the same way when they want to leverage something like IoT Bridge. One of the key things I know is that with Snowflake, and if I work my way down to the edge, there's lots of elements to try it for free. Good example is, I can do a 30-day piece with Snowflake for free on an extra small, right? I can do the same thing and test, and work with Ignition on their licensing. My question to you is, if we look at this from the perspective of this energy producer that definitely doesn't have the Chevron budget, but says that there's something we want to try with IoT Bridge, what does that look like?
So a couple of different things. You mentioned the free trials and things like
Right.
that, and I don't want to comment or say for Cirrus Link how all their licensing works, but they have a free trial license
free
as
tier.
well,
Absolutely.
for the IoT Bridge. So I mean, when you start doing it, especially if you have Ignition already,
Yeah.
it's essentially you're pointing the IoT Bridge, the edge broker. If it's Cirrus Link, it may be Chariot, but it could be some of the other edge brokers out there. When you've pointed those two, that data will start populating in Snowflake within minutes. And Arlen's done videos on that where he shows it, and I've sat
Sure.
on probably 100 now calls with Arlen, and he's doing this live for you. During those kinds of demos, showing, hey, we can get this data, so you can start the process of getting the data into Snowflake. You can understand, what that data is going to look like, and start being able to put things like anomaly detection very quickly without having to necessarily bring in full data science groups, because we democratize certain types of analytics. Anomaly detection is a good example where you
Right.
just run it from SQL. And you get access to a machine learning anomaly detection model kind of thing. You can run that quickly on the time series data as it's coming in,
Right.
and see the value. You can do your own timing and cost estimates, things of that nature, very quickly and easily.
Yeah, and so you said something there that I think is interesting. I've worked with other data engineers, folks. They're not necessarily in the field, right? And so what happens is, Greg, they build these complicated staging buckets that are out there, and I almost feel like when you want to run, when I want to leverage Snowflake, there is some modeling that's built right in. You just talked about that for a second. Would you say that are those like I call them out of the box things that you can do, in terms of modeling that's available through Snowflake?
So there's different options there.
Okay.
It's really going to depend on your use case.
Okay.
Right. And so part of that discussion is speed.
Right.
How quickly, how frequently do I, and there's economics around all those decisions.
Sure.
With any, platform and connections and all those kinds of things. We look at it as, what are you trying to solve? And it's not that you aren't able to solve other things, but
Right.
let's don't go to every minute. If you're doing reporting or analytics by shift, you could probably get away with every hour kind
Sure.
of thing.
Absolutely.
So it really depends on how you're using that data. That's part of it. Then the modeling aspects, and there's different ways of being able to leverage that data quickly. If you're developing production kinds of facilities and you're doing a lot of heavy analytics, you're going to probably working more with one of the system integrator partners here,
Right.
and helping leverage that. For the the non data science or data modelers component, there are capabilities in Snowflake Cortex, which was announced, I want to say, last year, and updated at our partners or summit conference this past June.
Right.
With the partners and things like that. You've got a lot more capabilities to make automated semantic layers on top of that data. So then you start looking at, how does that medallion architecture, and what do I need to support not only rapid types of analytics for things that probably are needed in the shop floor area,
Right.
versus more enterprise level where they're looking at it more from every several hours or once a day or whatever basis. So you have those capabilities.
Yeah, I think you're right. When it comes to oil and gas, energy, it's similar to manufacturing. There's not a huge requirement for this sub-millisecond sets. Really, what you're talking about is drilling data that comes in, and it's not like that in these, tight, sub-millisecond types. What we're really talking about is, hey, we do want to have some near real-time data that's coming in terms of drilling, in terms of when we're completing wells. when we're flowing back wells into production and then production wells. And believe it or not, there's actually elements in production where we're managing a curve. It's actually managing the life cycle of a well. And they're looking at this over a 7-day moving average. So there's really 7 days. They're looking at this moving average. So engineering cares about that. But also you have technicians that care about the surface environment, what's happening on the surface. And then you have those that care about what's happening downhole. And in both those cases, it is data that is either, like I said, a 7-day moving average, daily, hourly, things like that they're looking at, which I think falls right in line with capabilities built into Snowflake.
Well, and I think too, especially if you're in that field, right, and you have rigs and things like that scattered around, you're not making minute-to-minute maintenance kinds of predictions because you can't get somebody out there fast enough to satisfy something within a minute. You're doing longer term because you're scheduling. Ideally, you're scheduling. Hey, I've got to send a technician out. I've got to send a maintenance engineer. I've got to make sure they have the parts based on what they're doing. So all of those things, yes, you want them quickly, and but how quickly do you need them, given it takes several hours to get somebody going out there, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, and you made some good points, but they're right inside of Snowflake itself in terms of an offering. You did mention Cortex. What does that look like for someone? Like, where are you taking advantage of that if you're in the energy space, you think?
So, number of different areas. And Cortex has several components.
Right.
In website will go into a lot more detail.
Sure.
But I think in terms of the way I see using it, and there's Snowflake Intelligence and other things that are now layering on top of that to make this even easier. But there's Cortex Analyst, which is part of that semantic layer component I mentioned, as well as that's where you're using the natural language, so the Gen AI kinds of things and large language models to ask questions against that data.
Right.
Versus, I had to have built dashboards and they're fixed, and the next time I want to ask a different question, I have to go out and have somebody else build a new dashboard.
Right.
So this is allowing more of that ad hoc and self-serve, which is not specific to oil and gas, but it's
right. No, it's the same. Yeah, I hear you.
Across the board. And then you have the Cortex search side, which is more on the unstructured data. So how do I look at the manuals? So, I talked a little bit about the predictive maintenance side. So it's one thing to predict a failure, and that's primarily like a lot of the ignition data, the OT data, that the data scientists love to get involved with and build better predictive models.
Right.
There's a second side of how do I support that technician who's going out? And some of that is, okay, I have access to all the manuals without carrying big books. Or having a PDF I've got to search through.
To push a best practice, right?
Right. So there's that part, but then we can add in like previous service records.
Yeah, historical. Yeah.
So, which is often text-based, the comments and how I fix something, not only for that asset, but across all similar assets. And then I may add in context of operating conditions. Is this in, the Permian versus up in Alaska, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So those operating conditions may change the recommendations for the technician on what they're fixing or how they're fixing it, things of that nature.
Right.
And that's getting into that whole asset health area where you're leveraging those different components. But as an end user, you don't want to be thinking about, do I need to use Cortex one way or the other way? So there's abilities to take that and again, make it simpler for the developers as well as the users to how do I, get the best and the right access to these kinds of different data.
Yeah, I think, man, Greg, just as you're saying this, I'm already unpacking the thinking in terms of what's very common in energy is what we call compression fleet. So this is where you've got compressors in the area that are moving natural gas, and their job is to compress that gas and push it downstream, right? Either they're going to raise that pressure and move it, or they're going to lower that pressure down. So there's lots of on one side you have a market force on this side saying delivery, and then on this side you have we must deliver, right, to this side, and then there's the maintenance that's involved with compression fleets. So I guess what I'm saying is I see an opportunity already just with you talking.
Yep.
Is you've got that semantic overlay of best practice maintenance. You've got the historical data that's available from compression data that you can look at. And then what you're seeing is the comparison there and start leveraging the market force information along with your maintenance information to create what you're looking for.
Right.
I think that's a win right there automatically based on what I'm hearing. And, the one thing.
Well, and compressors
Yeah.
are always an interesting example to me because, you talk with the plant folks and, well, my plant's different.
Right.
Well, do you have compressors? Yeah.
Okay.
I have hundreds of compressors,
Right.
and pumps.
Right.
Well, okay, across your plants, even though they're making different things, you
Right.
still have many, many compressors.
Yep.
You may have different flavors of compressors,
Right.
Different suppliers.
Recip, different types for sure.
And pumps and all that. But I can still look at that as a fleet
Yes.
within a site, across sites.
Yeah.
How well do I service one? Who services them better? Who Walker talked about MTTR, mean time
To repair.
to repair, mean time
Absolutely.
between failures, all those. How do I look at those across those similar assets,
Right.
even though the plants are doing different things?
Yeah. The other case I'm hearing, I see is typical. Normally in Snowflake, there's a Snowpark element that you have to
Yep.
that, right? If I want to do that, if I'm on the data science side or
Right.
I'm in
Machine
data
learning
engineering,
and Python and all those wonderful
machine
things.
learning, or let's say that I wanted to create something pretty quick in Streamlit and I want to make that available to operations team to view.
Right.
That's possible. But what I'm hearing now is sometimes you're doing away with some of that. I'm not doing away, but you really can go and ask in natural language, hey, what does my compressor fleet look like in the last 30 days regarding X?
Right.
And now you've delivered an answer without having to go in. And don't get me wrong, I think Streamlit's a great tool because I can build some quick tools right away using
Yep.
Python.
Yep.
But at the same time, what I can do is if I can put that in just a query like I would ChatGPT, then pretty soon, what do I have? I have a story now.
Yep.
I have data, I can tell the story, and I can see. So I think that's what you're getting at. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I really feel that. I do want to ask you this, because, man, I would love to keep you, and they're telling me about my time. So
I got it.
And let me ask you this, you've had lots of conversations, and where does, what are some of the great elements that Snowflake is doing in terms of AI, machine learning, and is there any sort of MCP integration that you see down the line here?
Well, I think there's lots of opportunities going forward. I think and we all talk about AI, Gen AI, agentic, all
Right.
that. And I tend to use the term advanced analytics because I'm more about bringing the right tools
Okay.
to solve. And
I like that perspective.
mainly because I have a mathematics background. So
Okay.
it's like, okay, I need mathematical optimization there.
Yes.
ML may not be the best for that type of
Sure.
problem, so let's make sure I can do mathematical optimization, which you can also do in Snowpark, by the way.
Right.
The Python libraries, very cool, and those kinds of things are out there. So I think as we go forward, you're going to be seeing new uses of, the natural language questions on that data. It's all about bringing bigger context to the data.
Yeah.
When we talk about quality and yield and predictive maintenance, it's not just time series data. It's not just, it could be HR data, on
Yes.
the operators, and is it a 3-month person or a 20-year person? Or, it could be the operating conditions, humidity, and so it's more than just a series of data. It's really continuing to add and identify those variables that are driving
Yeah.
those machine learning models, let's say.
Yeah. And man, Greg, I would keep you here even longer and go against the production group, but I can't do it.
Nope, understood
And-
completely.
and-
This has been great.
Yeah, this has been good. And Greg, I appreciate your time. And I believe that after this, we really want to have the Snowflake group as part of the Energy Tech podcast with some of our, on the energy side. I think we're going to find a way to put that together. And I appreciate you being here and really unpacking a little bit and some sneak peeks, but you can definitely go to Snowflake and you can see they've got some great materials, especially on architecture, IoT Bridge. You've got use cases, you've got demos, and you've got take advantage of that extra small 30-day test. You can do that now. And again, I'm your co-host, Mike Flotis with the Energy Tech Podcast. I'm out of time with Greg from Snowflake. Thank you so much. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Energy Tech Podcast. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you very much.